Hello, whiskey cowboys and cowgirls. This is Whiskey Whistle, and I'm your host, Mark, bringing you whiskey review number 63. We're going to be looking at a Canadian blended whiskey. This one is called Pendleton, and it's quite interesting because, it's relatively new. This was released, I believe, in 2003, in fact. And this comes to you from not a Canadian company, but an American one called Hood River Distillers. So that's quite interesting. They are located in Oregon, and they chose a Canadian whiskey blend, a Canadian blended whiskey, to be I guess, almost the hallmark of their whole brand, their whole group of brands. So that's quite interesting. Um, it's 40% ABV, and for a Canadian whiskey, I don't know if you can see that, but this is very, very light in color. Much lighter than a lot of the Canadian whiskeys, the Canadian blended whiskeys. The blended Canadian whiskeys, I'm sorry, that you see on the market today. So I'm wondering if that is close to, or hopefully it is all natural in terms of the color. I really do hope so. So Pendleton blended Canadian whiskey. And it's really cool. This is named after a rodeo, in fact. And on the very front, you can see on the screen there right now is the brand motto or slogan, which is "Let her buck." So that's pretty cool. And interestingly enough, they also name their bottles. So the smallest bottle, which is the one I've got right here, this one is called a Colt. So let's have a Colt, shall we? If you have a bottle of Pendleton anywhere in your house, go grab it, pour yourself a glass, and why not share one with me? Let's get this open now. This one was brought here to Seoul, South Korea, where I live, via my parents who recently came to visit. So that was very nice of them. Mom, if you're watching, thank you very much for lugging this very big, heavy bottle along with the other ones in your suitcase. Shall we pour it? Let's give it a go. And we may as well just get it all in there. All right. Now I just poured it and I can already smell something going on there. I have pretty high expectations. You know, when I first saw this, I thought Canadian whiskey, blended Canadian whiskey that's bottled in USA, the company is American. I had my doubts about it. But the more I read about it, the more I am interested in finding out what this has to offer. Okay, we'll let that sit there for a little bit. And let's talk about Pendleton blended Canadian whiskey, shall we? There will be a short advertisement right here. Welcome back. So, Pendleton blended Canadian whiskey, I mentioned Hood River Distillers, Oregon. They created this blend in 2003. And one cool thing about it, you know, when it comes out of the barrel, it's at a much higher proof, a higher ABV than typically in the bottle. So what they chose to cut the high proof whiskey with is water from Mount Hood, which is apparently glacial fed. So that's pretty cool. And a little bit about Hood River Distillers. This company was founded in 1934, and they started out making fruit wine and brandy using leftover harvest from the fruit orchards. Oh my goodness, fruit orchards, apples, pears, berries, and so on. So they've been around for quite a while. In fact, they've been around for a lot longer than a couple of brands of Canadian blended Canadian whiskey. So interesting. And it looks like they're quite active. Very recently, they bought another distillery called Clear Creek. I wonder what that's like. It's located along the Columbia River in Oregon. And on the website, it says Pendleton Blended Canadian Whiskey was created to honor the American cowboy and cowgirl and celebrate the tradition of the Pendleton Roundup Rodeo. And also the official spirit of the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. I mentioned the slogan, Let Her Buck, and anything else? That's it. Now, from a very good, I'll say a very good friend of mine, although I've never met him in person. His name is Dave Worthington. He has a very big blog. You should look at it online, called Whisky Discovery, whisky-discovery.blogspot, and then .com or whatever your local area uses. So he reviewed this one back in 2012, him and his daughter Catherine. And from him, this is what I discovered, that Pendleton uses type 2 charring on ex-bourbon barrels. Type 2 meaning it's not the kind of alligator char, the very, very darkest, but somewhere in the middle. And this should provide, according to David, who probably got that from the distillery, should provide soft, smooth vanilla, caramel, and maple flavors. Additionally, he discovered, and I'll have to thank him personally, David, thank you very much for that. He discovered that the average age is 10 years. And the company told him they could have marketed it as a 7 or 8 year old Canadian blended whiskey, and as such, then we know, okay, so if it has 7 and 8 years old as the youngest whiskey in there, then to average out at 12, then we would assume that there should be 13 possibly older whiskey in the mix as well. They've also released 2 new varieties of Pendleton, one called 1910, which is a 12-year-old rye, and another called Midnight, which is a much higher proof, 90 proof. And this one is part finished in brandy barrels. So that's very cool. And sales-wise, it's a top 10 Canadian blended Canadian whiskey brand in the U.S. and the #1 apparently in Oregon, and rightfully so. That's their home turf. Okay, so let's get on to the nosing and tasting. Let's smell it, shall we? Now, for 40%, it has quite a big nose. It's a lot going on there. And the grain whiskey, the corn whiskey is certainly present. So there's some kind of a sort of buttery, like butter and caramel popcorn. Boy, I'm having a hard time believing this is only 40%. Lots of spice in there too. Typical cinnamon. Very big ginger too, considering this is Canadian whiskey. Now, where is the whiskey from? Well, all that we know is that, well, there's 3 very big distillers in Canada, and most likely, since this is a blend, it's blended from a bit of each, perhaps. And if I were to smell this, not knowing it was Canadian whiskey, it's interesting. I may actually liken this to some of the single malts that I have found here in Asia. One is a Taiwanese brand. So this really reminds me of the Taiwanese ex-bourbon oak expression from Cavallan Distillers, or the King Car Distillery. I think they've changed their name though to the Cavallan Distillery now. I'm not sure. And why would I guess the link there is perhaps the bourbon cask influence. So there's a lot of youth in here, but there's also some kind of age going on in the background there. Well, I can't sit here and smell it all day, so I'll have to get on to the tasting. Buttery. There's a bit of rye spice in there, as it should have, because this is blended Canadian whiskey, also known as rye. Kind of like a buttery mint. If you can imagine some rye toast with a bit of butter and throw some mint jelly on there, the one you would normally eat with lamb. Well, interesting nose, a bit young for me, but the age is coming out the more and more I smell it, so that's good. And again, the color pretty light in comparison with a lot of blended Canadian whiskeys on the market, and very nice legs. Okay, well, cheers everybody, and to the Hood River Distillers folk, good job with this one, I think. Let's get the tasting going on, and then we'll talk more about it. Don't know what I'm saying sometimes. Now the taste I definitely recognize as rye, but I quite like that. It's sugary, spicy, a little bit of that rye mintiness in there. A bit of leather oil, like the kind of oil you rub into leather, like a musk oil. And very buttery. Buttery caramel, bit of mint. That leather oil. Finish is fairly short. Very smooth drinking as well. This is something I think that, well, people who are coming from other spirits be it rum or vodka, who want to try something somewhat representative of Canadian whiskey, but something that is also very flavor forward and easy drinking, I would definitely recommend this to them. I think the weak point here is the nose. There's something just slightly, almost like it'd be like if you were having your whiskey downwind from a pump station. So that little bit of a waft in there. Now, some people will like that. Again, the nose is just not quite my cup of tea. There is some underlying sweetness there. Try that one more time. But where this really succeeds is in the palate. It's chock full of flavors, rye flavors, some bourbon flavors. Very, very nice. Nicely done, nicely made, nicely blended. And that glacier water, well, what would that do? Well, it may just give it a little bit of softness if there's a little bit of mineral content in the glacier water. Okay, now, even though this is 40%, I think this can probably do with a little bit more water than you might initially think. So I'm going to go ahead and put in about a good 2 milliliters in there. We'll let that mix up. Now, if you have been watching WhiskyWhistle, or you've been following me on Twitter or Instagram, those are all, by the way, WhiskyWhistle, one word, whiskey with no E, W-H-I-S-K-Y, and then whistle, W-H-I-S-T-L-E, WhiskyWhistle. You'll notice that I have put together a collection of Canadian whiskey reviews by Canadians. So this one will definitely be added, and I'll put a link to the playlist at the end of this video, so you can enjoy that. And I've got a few other sort of, well, what can I call them? Well, they're friends. I just haven't met them yet, and I will one day. One goes by the handle Beardly Gentleman, and the other goes by Whiskey in the Six, and his name is Rob. So you can enjoy. Oh, and one more fellow. His name is Swami Suave or Suave, and he also has done some Canadian whiskey reviews, which are included in the playlist. Okay, so if you have a Canadian whiskey review that you would like added to that playlist, and it was done by a Canadian, then please feel free to go ahead and add it to the list, or you can contact me and I'll get it added. Okay. All right. So Pendleton blended Canadian whiskey with a bit of water. The nose is much, much more enjoyable with a dash of water added. It's still very subtle. Spices there. Vanilla, caramel. Kind of a salted caramel though, which is interesting. All right. Well, let's taste that now, shall we? Cheers, everybody. This can definitely take some water. I initially would have said that this was a bit of a you know, a negative aspect, that it was bottled at 40%, but now I can see that that was pretty much right, because they can't go lower than that. Why would this have more potency at 40% than others? It could be a telltale sign of the amount of rye whiskey that was used. A lot of Canadian distillers actually will distill the different grains separately. So there may have been a very high content of rye whiskey added, which would have provide a lot of that spice and flavor. It could also just be the way it was distilled. So the distiller who's managing the stills can certainly affect the flavor, and if the ABV coming out of the still, the second still, double distillation usually occurs, or column still. In the column still, if the ABV is kept a bit lower, there should be more flavor involved, more flavor compounds left in the distillate, in the new make, the white dog, or whatever you want to call that, the moonshine. And then it's aged in oak, and it develops even more. So there you go. Okay, so let's try that with a little bit more water now. Now that I like. Not quite so fumey. It's now really just a mix of spice and vanilla. Sugar. Almost a bit of a rum scent on the nose. All right. One more time. This is still going quite strong. As you add water, you'll just get a little bit more mintiness coming through from that rye content. A bit of ripe apple coming through there now too on the nose. Now it's really smooth. Some of those sharp, spicy notes have been toned down. The ginger, that sort of minty toffee note has elevated. Cinnamon, a little bit downplayed with water. Well, that is a very, very rich, flavorful, blended Canadian whiskey. Would I buy that again? I definitely would. I will definitely try to find the 1910. I think that would probably be very, very interesting, as well as the Pendleton Midnight, which by stating rye on the packaging probably tells me that that's probably more like a straight rye comparatively to compare. You can't really compare because American whiskey is mashed all together. But anyway, so it looks like a little bit more of a rye content in the Pendleton Midnight. Last try. This is very nice, especially for, well, something that's probably fairly reasonably priced. This is a little bit more, I think, than some of the basic bottles from Canadian Whiskey Distillers. I think this particular miniature would have been about $5 plus or minus for 50 milliliters. Okay, so the WhiskyWhistle score for Pendleton blended Canadian whiskey is going to be 83 out of 100. Now, the only thing that I found, 83? Oh, you know what? We're going to upgrade that to 86. 86. Why 86? The nose, without water, right off the bat, I found slightly disconcerting. However, with a bit of water added and a bit of time spent, it really smoothened out. So that was pretty much saved it. And the strength of the flavors, given the fact that I have added roughly 5 or 6 milliliters to 30, so I've put in 20% more water than it was initially in there, and I'm still getting a very, very strong, strong flavored whiskey. So that tells me that they've done something right there. They've chosen the right whiskey to start out with, and they've blended it very well. So that's great. Definitely Canadian whiskey. Doesn't taste like bourbon. Doesn't taste like Scotch. It's on its own, and different from other Canadian distillers as well. Different from Crown Royal. Different from the Corby Spirits made Canadian whiskeys. So different among the same family. So it's definitely Canadian whiskey, but they've done something different with it. So congratulations to Hood River Distillers. Good job with that one. I do hope to review the other two that you've got in the very near future, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. If you have not subscribed, please do so. You can click the link right down there in the corner. And stay tuned. There is a lot more to come, okay? Take care now.